Brought to you by Charity Mobile. Switch to the phone company that supports your beliefs. All plans start under $50 before taxes and surcharges. Use promo code TRADITION at CharityMobile.com for a special offer. Many of you have been wondering what the fate of the FSSP are going to be under Leo. One of the reasons people wonder this is because under Francis, they received a literally handwritten promise from Francis, written on essentially a notepad or a napkin, promising them that they will be able to say the traditional Mass according to the 1962 liturgical books in perpetuity, meaning basically forever. However, this act of his, and I have no reason to doubt that the FSSP who posted this on their own website say that what they're telling is the truth, that they were given such a promise. I'm not going to call them liars. But you will never find this in the official depository of apostolic acts on the Vatican's website. It's not listed under Francis's activities. Yes, they have a handwritten thing with his signature on it. How binding is that going to be? We shall see. But people wonder what's going to happen under Leo with the FSSP. And they have good reasons to wonder about this. We saw in Detroit and we saw in Virginia and some other places where suddenly, well, not Virginia, but Charlotte and a few other places, in Detroit, bishops coming out of the woodwork to speed up their crushing of the traditional Latin Mass in their dioceses. They, without hesitation, were implementing Traditionis Custodes, citing that their predecessors, because these were typically new bishops to a person who did this, that their predecessors had asked for a delay of implementation on Traditionis Custodes from the Vatican while they came up with a plan on how to do it properly, and the Vatican granted this to them. This happened a few times, and they all say that their permissions expired, and so they just implemented these things. Now, they didn't think to submit another request to Rome, CCing the Holy Father on it, because there's a new Pope. And maybe they can get a permission. They didn't think to do that. And many people wonder about the fate of the FSSP. Every year, they get an apostolic visitation, which is a little unusual. Clearly, Rome is wanting to keep eyes on them to make sure that they offer the traditional Mass and the preconciliar sacraments, but they aren't training the priests to be troublemakers, essentially, is what it looks like as an outside observer who hears a little bit. I'm going to give you an example of why they do this. Every year, during the spring, your bishop will offer a Chrism Mass, and no priest is required to say it with him, but the bishop will invite all the priests of the diocese to go to the cathedral and celebrate, meaning celebrate with him, the Novus Ordo Mass for the Chrism Mass. This has been a sticking point with the FSSP for 30 years because they are dedicated to saying the traditional Mass exclusively. There are FSSP priests who have publicly offered the new Mass, and they do it on their own accord, but they have a promise that they will never be forced to say it and never be facing negative consequences for it. So far from Rome, they've never faced negative consequences, but that has not been the case in most places. And so I'm going to show you a story here of what happens. Gloria TV posted this. Headline: Public prayer, fasting, and online protest against crackdown of a flourishing Roman apostolate. And I'll go over this article in detail with you in just a moment. The FSSP in that diocese were invited to celebrate the Novus Ordo Mass at the Chrism Mass. They said no, as is their right, according to canon law and all the procedures protecting the FSSP. The bishop's response was to crush them in his diocese. For those wondering what's going to happen to the FSSP, it does sure seem like these days some bishops are feeling emboldened to act in ways that even Francis did not. We'll see. Time will tell. Here are the details. Quote, tensions have arisen over the decision of Bishop Francois Durand of Valence in the southeastern Drôme region of France to close the long-standing apostolate of the priestly fraternity of St. Peter, the FSSP, This apostolate was founded in September 1988. Catholics in Valence and Montpellier have started a strict fast and prayer vigil near the Church of Notre Dame in Valence. Some are sleeping in tents in the car park. Around 400 parish members signed an open letter on ledelphine.com urging the bishop to reconsider. The masses and the entire apostolate, including 13 catechism groups, are set to end on September 1st. For those keeping track, that's about 6 weeks from now. The diocese justified the crackdown by claiming, quote, repeated disregard for diocesan guidance. However, the key point of contention has just been the FSSP's refusal to concelebrate the Chrism Mass in the Novus Ordo. On the 15th of May, Bishop Durand had announced that the celebration of Sunday Mass in the Roman Rite, meaning the traditional Mass, would be entrusted to diocesan clergy, meaning the full implementation of Traditionis Custodes. All other sacraments will be abolished. That means that all other options for the traditional Mass will be abolished in that diocese. One priest from the priestly fraternity of St. Peter, they continue to celebrate Mass once a week in the diocese. Once a week. In a second letter dated the 23rd of May, Bishop Durand had criticized pastoral initiatives of the FSSP lacking, quote, diocesan orientations. What that generally means is that they're teaching the Catholic faith the same way your great-grandparents learned the Catholic faith. Through the same kinds of catechetical studies, the same kinds of teaching that our ancestors would have seen as Catholic, as opposed to the new synodal spirit of Vatican II stuff going on. Much firmer than what we had in what happens in many dioceses now. That is what that means. It means that they are not going with the spirit of the times. They're teaching something that the local authorities in the Vatican, or at least in this case, in that diocese, find objectionable. So, when I tell you that men like James Martin and other equally horrendous priests are able to teach heresy publicly, and they get away with it, despite there being a new pope, they continue to get away with it, while bishops crush the FSSP, despite them having a papal signed guarantee of their protection. It's a sign of the times we live in. And one wonders if other bishops will follow suit. Short of the Vatican intervening and telling this bishop, no, you can't do that, will other dioceses and other bishops' conferences follow suit? I'm reminded of a story from the last couple of years. Down in Mexico, there was a seminary, the FSSP. I think it was an FSSP one. It was definitely a not an SSPX seminary. It had a good relationship with the bishop until it changed suddenly. And he tried to close the whole thing down. It took the laity organizing in that diocese to keep some presence open to the public for that seminary open. Very little is happening with this. A petition letter. I'm not a fan of petition letters. If you want to read it, it'll be on the show notes at returntotradition.org at the new Anthony Stine Substack. Links in the description box to those. Do not sign that petition unless you live in the diocese. This is clearly an open letter from the affected laity to that bishop. So respect their efforts here, but read it if you want to. I'll have it in the show notes there for your consideration. But note that heretic priests like James Martin and others never, ever get punished. It's only those who uphold the same religion of our ancestors. They're the ones who get punished for doing things that are perfectly within their canonical rights, as in this case, not being forced to offer the Novus Ordo Missae. Curious what you think about this, so let me know in the comments. The French bishops are the home of the per capita largest traditionalist movement in the entire church, meaning you have more, per number of French Catholics, you have more traditional mass offerings than anywhere else in the world. And the bishops there have opinions that range from mildly disinterested to the whole thing to openly hostile. So you may see more of this in France. I am very curious what you think about this, so let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It absolutely does help. Sharing this on social media helps too. If you would please pray for everybody affected in that area, that would be greatly appreciated, including the bishops. We're not here to make you angry at them. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.